are Running with the Devils, and it is rivalry week. Oh, we love it here on Running with the Devils. Love talking ASU, U of A. We'll get into that, plenty of that a little bit later. I'm the Rhino, Ryan Knowles. Here with me, as always, Big John Caldwell. Big John, how are we doing today? Sitting here 0-2. Unfortunately, this abbreviated season's been a little bit difficult to deal with. Obviously, the Devils not really playing up to their ability as so we certainly know they're capable of. But, still a lot to take to like from this past week against UCLA. Of course, we're going to talk plenty of U of A on this show. Coming up this Friday, the battle for the Territorial Cup down there in the old Pueblo. Devils looking to make it 4 in a row over the Cats down there at Arizona Stadium. So, but we'll start with UCLA and Big John. We don't. It's tough. Any loss is tough, certainly, especially at home. This is probably the only home game the Devils play all year, but just not necessarily what you want to see from a team. A lot of penalties, those 2 costly turnovers in the red zone, just some things that ended up biting the Devils at the end there.
Yeah, lack of practice time. This is a sport where you spend 10 times, 20 times in practice compared to what you do on the field, and it showed. You had guys lining up, in too many men in the backfield, too many guys on illegal men downfield. It's the stupid penalties that really you fix that when you practice in terms of how you line up.
They were calling that a little close, courtesy of the whiny little bitch Chip Kelly, as he was yapping at the refs.
Oh, he's known for that. Yep. I think that we knew that we would be sloppy when it comes to execution and tackles, and sure enough, it was. Didn't think it would bite us in the ass in terms of costing us the game. I mean, we took the lead, and there was some very costly mistakes that kept us again from we beat ourselves again.
And it was a slow start, getting down 17-0 at one point. It ended up being 17-3 right there at the end of the half. But second half, the Devils definitely came out in the third quarter. Started to move the ball, put some points on the board, and like you said, took a lead. Unfortunately, just weren't able to hold it there at the end. But as we get in here to a new segment on Running with the Devils, the good, the bad, and the ugly. This is something that we used to do. I used to do on a spiritual predecessor of with the Devils, On the Line with Juan Roque and myself. We used to always go through the good, the bad, and the ugly in the week of sports and through that week's ASU game. And for this week, we'll start with the good. Everybody likes to be positive, and there was a lot to take from this game. Certainly the running game, once again, I think this is definitely the strength of this team. It's a lot further along than the passing game. These, 2 running backs in Rashad White and Chip Trainum are definitely, at a higher level than I think anybody anticipated. And, you combine them with the way that the offensive line is blocking up front and the way that the tight ends have been playing as well and how they're being used in the running game. I think that's something that, this team, they've come out 2 straight weeks, they've come out throwing the ball. And the strength of this team is clearly the running game. So it's something that they should definitely focus on going forward, I think.
It's our most consistent part of our game. In fact, we now lead the pack in rush per carries and in rushing yardage. We are, the 2 running backs have different styles, but man, I tell you, when
but that's what makes them such a formidable tandem. They complement each other very well.
Yep. Yeah, and while we're running in sort of run downs, so to speak, I don't seem to be well defended by anybody at this point. Largely because these guys they're big guys and they fall forward, and their yards after your first contact.
Yards after contact has been very impressive.
Yeah,
they don't just go down, at the first sign of a hit. They'll fight for extra yards, and it's definitely showing.
Yeah, and we'll get into the numbers in a minute. But in terms of who, what we think should happen going forward, but 22 carries between the 2 running backs 7.1 yards per
when
carry.
they're both averaging more than 7 yards a carry, exactly.
Yeah. So
that's not enough. You should have at least 30 from those running backs when they're playing that well. And hey, I mean, he had White only had 7 carries, and he still averaged about 7.5 yards a carry. So
no, I mean, and Jaden had 8 carries. It looked like about 3 or 4 of those were designed runs. Some were just him reading the defense and took off. And I never want to discount his running ability. What I'm saying is, when you have 2 big stud running backs like that, it can take the load off him, take some wear and tear off of him a little bit.
And they were definitely going to go to train him down there at the 1 when Jaden fumbled the snap, and he stepped on the offensive lineman, stepped on his leg, and he lost the ball. He definitely would have gone down there. He was definitely better throwing. Sticking with Jaden, he was definitely better throwing the ball this week than he was against USC,
right?
Which was very encouraging to see. He was 21 of 35, 225 yards, had a touchdown, but he had a bad interception. And we'll get into that here in just a minute. But it was great to see him kind of spread the ball around a little bit, and just do some good things for once and get some confidence.
Again, the timing and the rhythm is something that comes with practice, and being we didn't practice anything but a week before UCLA. It showed, but again, he was better. I thought the nerves that he sort of showed at USC were lessened. He threw the ball away when he should have. He looked a lot more comfortable in this game. But yeah, there's still a timing communication thing going on with a couple of receivers, probably where guys broke the wrong way. The interception was arguably his worst interception.
Well, you can't throw into double coverage, and we'll get into that here in a minute. But we'll switch to the defense now. And the pass rush was very impressive. It was great to see, Tyler Johnson and Michael Matus, the 2 bookends, combining for 9 tackles, 4 sacks, and 6.5 tackles for loss. Mike Matus looked unstoppable there on that safety that they forced, the intentional grounding on Dorian Thompson-Robinson. But then Tyler Johnson, he had 2.5 sacks, I believe. He was named defensive lineman of the week. So that was really great to see. Good for him, especially for a guy who considered retirement before the season.
Tyler is a great kid. I've spent a lot of time with him after practice and the camp tee, and we text back and forth all the time. And I congratulated him right after the game for a good game, and then right the next morning for the Player of the Week. And he's I think what he's discovering is, I think the weight is helping him. The fact that he's beefed up and he hasn't lost a lot of speed. But the biggest thing about his game is he's figuring out, I call it the why. Why are you out there? Why are you playing? And I think he's kind of figured out that he would like to play at the next level. He certainly has the body to do it. And if he keeps showing, in these next 2 games, what he's just did, he's going to get invited to some combine.
Yeah, definitely. I think that the change in scheme has helped him as well, shifted over from the 3-4 to the 4-3. I think has definitely benefited him. And then of course the wide receiving core definitely had a nice bounce back game after really struggling against that tough secondary that USC had. They had a much better game. 8 different receivers catching balls. It was great for them. Certainly Andre Johnson and Jordan Porter. We didn't really see much of them against USC. They both had some nice plays. Johnny Wilson, had about as bad of a game as you could possibly have against SC. He made a couple nice catches. Actually, Johnson and Wilson both had touchdown catches taken away by penalties, unfortunately. So
I thought Wilson.
There was a lot to like. There was a lot to like out of the receiving core. It's a little bit deeper, I think, than we thought.
I thought Wilson was going to, at the SC game, they were all body catches, and they're bouncing off of. He actually was hands catching, and I was very impressed at how he.
To do.
Well, at that position, I thought he really needed a lot of work, but it turns out he is a hands catcher. He's going to be. I think he's super hard to defend at that height.
Yep. And then, another pleasant surprise, the defensive back turned running back, DJ Taylor,
Oh,
a nice return on the kickoff, and he got tripped up by the kicker, literally, which led to another 15 yards. So good to see that they have a weapon on special teams, which is something they've been lacking for a while.
I loved Herm's comments after the game. He said, "I don't think Coach Slocum knows this yet, but we found our kick returner." So I think he's going to be asserting himself there, saying he's the guy.
It was good to see. Unfortunately, Christians and Dejas missing that field goal, but then Jack Luckhurst, the legacy devil, coming out and kicking a long field goal, which was great. The legacy kicker, I beg your pardon, coming out and kicking a long field goal right there before the half was great to see as well.
Nick Luckhurst was one of my favorites back in the day.
Nice.
All right.
To the bad, unfortunately, these are things, in a 25-18 loss, there are a few things that are not going to go your way. And, we learned this real quick that we mentioned it last week. Devils are not very good when they're not forcing turnovers. I mean, they had 3 against USC, which turned into points. They didn't have any against UCLA, which, allowed the Bruins to move the ball down the field, especially late. I mean, that last drive, they had a couple of opportunities to get off the field and didn't take advantage of them. They almost had to let UCLA score, just give themselves a chance to tie there at the end. And, that's unfortunate to see. And there was, a couple drives there where UCLA looked like they were just running the ball at will. And the Devils did tighten up and were better as the game went on. But, just some little things need to be cleaned up there, I think, as far as assignments go.
On defense, in the SC game, we were you had guys like Chase Lucas who were, ball tackling and coming from behind and knocking balls out. And I didn't see any of that in this game.
No, not really.
So I think it'll be a point of emphasis this week.
Yeah, and then DeLon Hurt, who we didn't even really mention, as far as he comes out and has a great game. You got to be able to clamp him down, and you got to make plays on the ball as a defense. I mean, that's what this defense is predicated on. You got to be able to go up and make plays on the ball. And that 30-yard catch that Hurt had, I mean, DeAndre Pierce was right there. He goes up and high points that ball and takes it away instead of getting it taken away from him. We could be talking about a much different game.
Yep.
So,
yep.
Yeah. But and then
it's a game of inches.
Totally. And just going back to the offense, Jaden Daniels, he did have a much better game than they did against SC, but the decision making is still not where it needs to be. I think he did make a good decision to keep the ball on that TD run that he had, certainly, but he's got to get more consistent with his play. I think part of that is not working with his young receivers as much, having a new offensive coordinator, trying to learn a new system. All of those go into play, especially when they haven't had as much practice time as you would have liked. They've only had only played in 2 games, so it's not all him. But I still would like to see a little more consistency, some better decision making from him going forward, especially on that interception that he had on the throwing in double coverage like that is just not a good idea. And that was something we never saw from him last year.
No, you didn't. And you saw he and Zach talking on the sideline, and they did ring over the receiver, and they were talking about where the break should have occurred, and they definitely were not on the same page. So, and I like how Zach immediately goes to correct that or talks about it. But he was and Zach was smiling. So was JD. So maybe we got 2 guys who know that it was just an honest goof up.
Yeah, and that's something he needs to work on. I think just taking the check down. Maybe, just at least for the time, in the short term, maybe just taking, looking short to long. A lot of teams will have you look long to short. Maybe look short to long for the time being, and maybe just take what's there, what the defense is giving you, as you get more comfortable with the system and with the receivers. I think that's not the worst thing in the world. And part of that's coaching and the play calling. And coaches weren't doing any Daniels any favors in this game. It was obvious that the Bruins were blitzing. I mean, they had so many guys up on the line. They were bringing guys from the edge, and they were, they weren't doing check with me's. They weren't doing anything to take the pressure off of Jaden Daniels by moving him around and or switch into like a screen or something quick as opposed to these long developing plays they seem to be wanting to run.
Yeah, and UCLA in several times where when they blitzed, they were looping on our left side. They were moving that and they were looping him in off the tackle or in off between the tackle and the guard. So and a couple cases the left tackle chose the wrong man and we paid for it. And it actually happened on the other side at least once I saw. So yeah, we're having trouble picking up the right man in some of these 5-man, 6-man, defensive attack up front. And I think that'll get better. It'll get better as the running backs start taking on more of a blocking kind of role too. Almost every play I saw, our running backs release real quick, and there's very little responsibility for the running backs to block anybody.
Yeah, I think that comes with having young running backs. It's certainly something that they need to work on. But I think certainly something that the entire offense can look at and say, hey, this is something that we need to do, and the coaches need to follow suit and do that as well, because they seem to just put Jaden in bad positions all night at times. Those 5 sacks, how many of those could be avoided just by running a check with me, changing the play from the sideline into something a little. Something that's going to take the pressure off of Jaden. So something to work on certainly. And then on to the ugly penalties continue to be a problem. 12 for 83 yards. Again, this comes from a lack of practice time, just lack of discipline, and also endurance. I think it plays a part. And a lot of these guys maybe not in game shape, and they're struggling to make consistent plays because they're tired.
Yeah, so and their mind's a little. The body's doing one thing, but the brain's doing another. You're right.
Yeah, and refs weren't doing them any favors, and they're calling it really for that illegal man downfield. And of course, I mentioned Chip Kelly's yapping at the refs, as he usually does. But that's something that still they shouldn't make it close. They got to because they got called on that against USC as well. That's just something that needs to be shored up if they want to have success going forward. And then on the defense, we mentioned the poor tackling. There's something else that needs to work on.
Yeah, that big one was the Stephen Wright.
When he got run over on that 60-yard run, that just can't happen.
That's billboard. Yeah, that's not good. That's bulletin board material there.
And then we also meant, that's something that you got to get better. You can't, that'll come with time. As they do it more in games, I think that the tackling will improve. In games and in practice, they'll get better at that. So that's just I think that's a temporary thing. Unfortunately, did show out in this game. And then the coaches have got to, lost the game as much as the players. We mentioned the play calling, just not as crisp. I don't think they didn't. They've got to recognize what the defense, what the opposing side of the ball is doing as much as the players. And make adjustments on the sidelines, and I don't think that they're doing that fast enough. So that's something else that needs to be worked on.
What I see is I love what Zach is doing in terms of all the motion. There's certain plays I love when they pull the 2 tight ends from one side to the other. That blocking scheme they do when they come across and take out the end and the outside linebacker, that works every time. The double pass, brilliant. But again, it seems like we're calling most of the plays on the sheet as to what's our best play in this circumstance, as opposed to trying to put together what's best given the momentum at the time. If the momentum is going with run, if the run's working, you don't look and say what's our best second down play. You just keep running the ball, right?
Exactly.
You shouldn't have. Don't have to look. Don't even look at that. Yeah, don't look at that play sheet. Just to run the ball.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And I think that that's they may be trying to outthink themselves, outcoach themselves, and maybe just simple things. Keeping it simple is just the best way to move forward. And I think that's something else that they've got to work on. So, that closes the book on UCLA. Certainly, again, you feel like, that they played better, that the Devils maybe lost more than UCLA won, but you try to take it as a learning experience and move on. UCLA, they played in more games. They had, a little more polish on them.
Yeah,
it certainly showed. So
they did. I don't think that they had really a superior team or superior athletes. They had a few nice playmakers. So did we. You've seen them in the game. I love the future because I think we have a great freshman core of athletes. A better freshman core of athletes out there than they had. 2 years ago they were all freshmen on that team, and they're very junior and senior laden now. So in terms of what's going forward for next year, I love what I saw. I think we it'll be a whole different kind of ball game next year.
Yep. So moving on to U of A here, the game is Friday at 5 on ESPN. U of A 0-4 on the season, winless, but just like the Devils. But unlike the Devils, their losing streak dates back to last season. 11 straight losses going back to last year. Last time they won was against Colorado in 2019. First time in the history of the Territorial Cup, going back over 100 years, or 120 years now, back to 1899. Both teams are winless now, and it's
a very unusual year, folks.
Oh yeah, and of course ASU won. They won 3 in a row. Looking at 4 of the last 5, looking to make it 4 in a row and 5 of the last 6 here on Friday. And ASU favored in this game, but records, the talent, I mean, just the records, everything just tends to go out the window. What you think guys are going to do, what the expectations for what the team is going to look like, they tend to go out the window in games like this. I mean, that's true for any team in college football when they face their rival. I mean, we'll talk about some of our experiences with the rivalry here coming up in a minute. But even though this team hasn't played well for most of the year, they're still a very dangerous team with a lot of really good players.
Yeah. I want to just point out something too, and maybe we can get into this as we drill down into the offense and defense next. One of the things that, if you go back and look at these 4 losses, they've got on the board in the first quarter, and oftentimes they've had the lead in the first quarter. I expect them to do the same in this game, and I wouldn't be surprised if we don't trail at the end of the first quarter.
That is the thing with U of A. They have started fast. And ASU started slow in most of their game in their game this far. So that's something you got. If you're ASU, you cannot get into a hole again against this team.
No.
They struggled on defense this year, but they can put points up in bunches.
Mm-hmm.
And it starts with their quarterback, of course, Grant Gunnell. He's been out for most of the last 2 games. He went out on, I think, like the second or third snap against UCLA and missed all of that game, missed all of Colorado. Still dealing with a shoulder injury.
Mm-hmm.
He's still questionable at this point. We don't really have an official word as of Wednesday night whether or not he's going to play.
Right.
He's been excellent for them this year. But in high school he was a tremendous player. Texas's all-time leader in passing in high school, which is very impressive when you consider the caliber of players that come out of there. But he's 52 of 76, 547 yards, 6 touchdowns, and an interception on the season.
Didn't he come out of the El Paso area?
He plays.
Yeah, didn't he come out of the El Paso area?
Somewhere West Texas.
Yeah.
I know that.
Yeah.
But and he got some reps last year, and we were both surprised he didn't play against U of A, against ASU.
Yeah.
So this is a guy who takes care of the ball. He's a very accurate passer. He's not going to be Khalil Tate out there turning the ball over every other play. So if he plays, the dynamic of this game could change very quickly.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And
his backup's pretty is not as good as he is.
But he's
a true freshman.
True freshman, yep. And he's been serviceable in his time so far. 36 to 67, 305 yards. Hasn't thrown a touchdown pass yet, but 3 interceptions. But he's mobile. He's a bit of a dual threat. He will get out and run. 78 rushing yards in 2 games. He's a good athlete. Certainly somebody who's a threat. You certainly don't want to take lightly. even though he hasn't put up stellar numbers thus far, the chances that he's gotten.
Right. But with a such a stud running back as Brightwell, I don't think Plummer has to be an All-American out there. I think he just needs to hand the ball off.
Oh yeah, right. just to exist long enough to hand the ball off, as they used to say. But because Gary Brightwell, he's really had a good year so far. 71 carries, 353 yards, only one touchdown thus far. I was a little bit surprised about that. But he's a guy, great combination of size and speed. I mean, he gets out in the open. I mean, he's a home run threat. He's not going to be. He doesn't dance around very much. He's shifty, but he's not going to Barry Sanders you. He'll run over you just as easily as he'll run around you. So definitely a guy that they're probably their their best offensive player, I would say.
And I think where he's most
skill position guys go.
Yeah, where he's most impressive is inside the 20-yard line. He's very, very effective down there. And you'll see in a minute why I'll bring that up in our keys to the game. But
his backup Michael Wylie's been very good this year. 24 carries, 184 yards, 2 touchdowns as kind of a change of pace. But he's a guy who definitely makes the most of the chances that he gets. I think he averaged like 12 yards a carry against Colorado. He had a couple nice runs in that game. He's somebody who's very explosive and they like to go to. So definitely somebody to watch out for as well.
Yep.
And the passing game's kind of suffered with Grant Gunnell being out the last 2 games. Booby Curry and Jamari Joyner were thought to be the 2 big receiving threats, but they're both big guys, well over 6 foot. Can go up and get the ball. They're good route runners. They can make plays basically. But they've only combined for 19 receptions and 1 touchdown thus far this season. So, they haven't really been the threats I think that everybody thought they would be coming into the season, but they could just as easily break out in this game. So definitely gotta lock them down, especially when it just came out. It doesn't sound like ASU is going to have Jack Jones again this week. So
that's the latest news.
Receivers, are going up against the next man up. So the DBs have got to bring their A game against these guys, especially with the way that Stanley Berryhill's been playing this year.
Mm-hmm. Well, in fact, one of the things we talked about last week, if you remember, my keys was that the guys who were stepping up for Jones and Croswell were going to really have to do a job, and I thought for the most part they did. They really our DB core, really played admirably at times. Again, it's not the. I thought that was sort of the heart and soul of the team. By losing 2 of your starters, it's put a big crimp in our secondary. But having said that, I think we do have the personnel to keep up with these guys, and we have enough depth to and there's nobody who's really a weak link out there. There's nobody who's going to be on. Who's going to be.
This is a very deep receiving core. Especially with Brian Castile was kind of their go-to receiver last year. Majon Wright has been a solid newcomer. You'll see both of them on the field. They've been playing very well this year. And then the O-line has struggled to protect the quarterback. I mean, they've had some problems with opposing pass rushes this year.
Sure.
They're kind of built the way I think ASU's line is right now to run the ball. That's kind of been their strength as well this year. So definitely an offense that kind of hinge on whether or not Gunnell plays, I think, but still an explosive running game and some athletes on the outside that you need to contend with. So the Arizona defense, they struggled last year, to say the least. I mean, they were not a very good unit last year. They fired their defensive coordinator halfway through the season. And then they bring in Paul Rhodes, the former Iowa State defensive coordinator. They've been a little bit better this year, but that's not saying much. So
they had nowhere to go but up, right?
They only have 2 sacks as a team on the season. They really haven't. They've been terrible against the run. They're last in the Pac-12 and near the bottom in the country. Average, they're giving up almost, I think, over 273 yards a game. They gave up over 300 yards to Jarek Broussard from Colorado last week. So, this is a team, this is a defense that just, is not very good. And this is kind of the feeding time for ASU's offense, I think.
Well, we look at stats a lot, guys, and the thing that jumps off the sheet is number one in rush offense, which is us, and the last place in rush defense is U of A. So that's an obvious point that you circle and say, something's gonna break big time here.
Exactly. Yes. And they have a couple guys in Rahidi Short and Lorenzo Burns who've been there for a little while. They're both upperclassmen, leaders on that defense who played well this year. Anthony Pandy, who's played very well at the linebacker spot. He has the only 2 interceptions that the entire unit has on the season. And then Rourke Freeberg, he kind of plays a safety linebacker hybrid position.
Local guy.
Another guy who's found his way in the backfield with 3 tackles for loss this year. So even though they haven't really played as well as a unit, still some individuals out there who played well thus far. They're dealing with, of course, with several guys who transferred. They had to replace, so they're doing that right now.
And they had some guys at the beginning of the season who opted out for COVID. I think there were 6 guys who opted for COVID as well.
Yeah. So these are keys to the game presented by XLLending.com. For all your mortgage needs, check out XLLending.com. And, first and foremost, we both mentioned it a couple times during the course of the show. Run the ball. You are a running team right now. Zach Hill, Herm Edwards, if you're watching, you're a run team. Okay, run the ball.
I know Herm gets it.
Yeah, exactly.
I know.
Yeah, the Cats gave up over 300 yards to Colorado. They actually 400. They only gave the 300 yards was Broussard by himself. They gave up over 400 yards rushing to the Buffaloes as a team. So they are horrible against the run. And ASU's leading the conference in rushing. Run the ball. Play your strength. Even if they have 8 in the box, that doesn't necessarily mean they can stop you. So, exactly. And then on defense, this is an offensive line that's not built to protect the quarterback for very long. Force some bad decisions. Get after especially if it's Plummer out there, the true freshman. You can get in his face, hit him a few times in the mouth, and force him into some bad decisions. I don't think there's any way you can lose this game.
It'd be a very long day for him. Yeah.
Oh, definitely. And even if Gunnell plays, I think if you get him out of a rhythm, he's a guy who still a young player, very very talented player certainly, but you can still get to him and force him into some bad decisions as well. That's certainly something I think that the front seven's got to focus on and really get home. And they've been really good. I mean, Coach Rodriguez has been a revelation, I think. He's done a great job, turning this front four into just an elite defensive unit so far. As far as the pass rush goes, we were a little concerned where it was going to come from, but I think it's certainly been there thus far this year. So they got to continue to eat this week against a weaker opponent. And then finally, you got to bottle Brightwell. Gary Brightwell is the far and away the best offensive weapon for the Wildcats. He's, a home run threat every time he touches the ball. You don't want him beating you, okay? So if I'm ASU's defense, I'm stacking the box. Especially if Plummer plays, force him to beat you. Force him to throw the ball downfield. Even if you have to put your DBs on an island, I don't want Gary Brightwell being the guy because what he's capable, and Michael Wylie to a lesser extent, what they're capable of. And this is a running team. They want to be able to run the ball, especially if they have their backup quarterback out there. So if you can take that aspect of the game, especially if you're playing with a lead, I think that that you certainly give yourself a great chance to win.
I think my keys are exactly the same. They're in slightly different order. I'm saying get the Gunnell and Plummer early and often. My way of looking at it is set the edges real hard so Brightwell cannot get around the edge. Okay, and let the
when he gets out in the open field, that's when he's really dangerous.
Very dangerous, especially inside the 20. He's a huge threat. So that's what my last point is. That you got to contain him, especially inside the 20. As you're setting hard edges, and if you're if you're going to put pressure on the quarterback, it's coming from the middle. But again, I'm with you. Run the damn ball 30 times. I want to see for Traynham and White.
Well, they've had success blitzing the linebackers up the A gap quite a bit. That's what that's what Marvin Lewis loved to do in Cincinnati, and that's what ASU's done a lot this year. And they've had success getting pressure with that look. So there's no reason they can't do it here and have success as well.
Yeah, I just think if they can get to the and Gunnell's still pretty young. I mean, he's a sophomore, right?
Yeah.
And if he's really is, if they won't play him, I think if this is if one big hit knocks him out for a long period of time and or threatens next year. Yeah. So I could honestly see Plummer starting just because if it's a shoulder, a separation, something like that, you can't really rush. All it takes is one more shot on that shoulder, like we did up at Cal last year.
And for those of you wondering, there's no relation to Jake. It's actually Plummer, like the trade,
like butt cracked.
And then I think you definitely got to run the ball on offense as well. I mean,
I'm just saying that.
Continue to feed Traynham and White, and hey, maybe you can get Daniel Nagata involved as well.
Yeah, I expect him. If we get a nice lead, I expect him to. It depends what they're giving us, right? It's all a matter of what they're giving you. So let's. He's a very capable guy. He has gotten a couple of touches so far this year, and I know Zach Hill's very high on him as well. So
But Traynham and White, they're the bell cows. They're the workhorses. I think you got to continue to feed them.
We haven't had this.
They've just been a revelation. They've been amazing this year, and I think you gotta continue to get them the ball.
Right.
So
prediction time.
Yeah, our predictions. So of course I'm going 27-13. I think that they do win by 2 touchdowns in this game. I think that ASU, is 2 touchdowns better than the Cats. I think that there's especially if Grant Gunnell does not play, you're looking at an offense that's going to struggle for most of the game. Brightwell will certainly get his touches, and I think he'll get his yards. But if you can keep them out of the end zone, I don't think there's any way you don't win this game with the way that the offense has been able, the ASU offense has been able to run the ball and move it at times. But they got to stay committed to the run and continue to let White and Traynham do what they do.
Yeah, I think it could get ugly if it shapes up the way I see it, and that is you knock out or you force young Plummer to make dumb throws. I see a defensive score in here.
Yeah, hey, I think we want to see at least 2 turnovers from this defense.
At least,
I think that if they get that, there's no way they don't win this game. Right.
As I said earlier, I think you'll see U of A get out, maybe score first. We can't let them get up 17-0 like we did at UCLA.
Yeah,
that's not helpful to a team that's really trying to polish their game right now and end their campaign on a high note.
Yeah.
So
and as we like to do every year here on Runnin with the Devils during rivalry week or hate week as we like to call it. There's what's your my favorite? We go through our favorites, some of our favorite rivalry game memories, Territorial Cup game memories. I know for me, it was one of my first experiences with the Territorial Cup, the Duel in the Desert, I guess, as it was better known back then. It was 2005, and it wasn't much of a year to speak of for either team, but it was my first experience in person with the rivalry, and sitting in the student section and seeing just every how the fans were and whatnot. It was an experience to say the least, and it turned out to be a great game. ASU gets down in the early and gets down multiple scores in the first half. And then Willie Tuitama, the talented quarterback for U of A, and their very talented running back Mike Bell both go out in the third quarter, and then suddenly U of A can't move the ball, and ASU, they pick up a big play from Terry Richardson, who returns a punt 71 yards for a touchdown. ASU then gets a 2-point conversion to tie the game at 20, and then Rudy Carpenter on the last drive of the game takes ASU all the way down inside the 5, and Jesse Ainsworth kicks a field goal as time expired. for the 23-20 victory. So
really,
that one was that was a great game. Even though neither team really had a very good record, ASU was still trying to make it to a bowl game under Dirk Cutter, and they ended up playing in the Insight Bowl in downtown Phoenix, as it was known then, against Rutgers. So it's still a great memory for me. My first experience going to the rivalry game in person, and great to see the Devils get a victory.
Mine had to be, folks have been going to U of A games since '78, and but I got to tell you, it's just for pure thrills. The come from behind 19 points at U of A 2 years ago, folks, was it was special, and everybody was in our little group who was at the game was saying, "Oh, we're done, we're cooked, we're over." I thought there was something about the way they came out for the second half. Their body posture was really good, and I just said to everybody, "They're going to win this game." I can just they look very confident. They're not rolling over. And if you remember that we weren't playing that well, and we let ourselves get down.
We were down 19 at one point. Very good.
But it was probably the most thrilling come from behind win. And you hate, it doesn't matter that we won because they forced an error. It was just it was the thrill of beating them down there, and really setting up a lot of good seniors off with a great memory.
Absolutely.
It's kind of salvaged that year too, I thought, for us as well. But it's funny how this one game.
It was funny too, because before that, they went through a stretch there where the home team was winning.
Yeah, right.
It was strange, especially I think the road team hadn't won the Territorial Cup since 2012. Before that, and that was another one that was another great game. As you see right there.
Wide right.
Yeah. Lucas Haversick. Love you, brother. He missed one in the game last year too. So that'll do it for this week on Running with the Devils. We thank you for joining us for our rivalry show. Of course, it's Hate Week. No pity for the kitty, and we got to end on a laugher. Of course. Hey, John, why should you never make change with a U of A football player?
I don't know.
Because you only get 3 quarters.
Oh, but
hey, John, why can you never win an argument with a U of A fan?
Tell me, Ryan, why can't you win an argument?
Because they're always trying to make an extra point.
Oh, don't say that.
Too soon? Yeah. So that'll do it for this week on Running with the Devils. We thank you for joining us as always. We will be back next week because the Devils will have one more game against the Pac-12 North opponent, their counterpart in the standings. It looks like Oregon State, but that's why they play the game. Could be very interesting to find out. But we will know by this weekend, and we will see you next week to tell you all about it. So for the Rhino, Ryan Knowles, and Big John Caldwell, we say goodnight. Go Devils. Forks up. And no pity for the kitty.
Go get him. Oh.